Music has always been an essential part of human culture. In the 1900s, songs like Bill Bailey, Won't You Please Come Home, by Arthur Collins in 1902.
Summer's day, sun was shining fine. The lady love of old Bill Bailey was hanging clothes on the line in her backyard, and a weeping heart.
And In the Good Old Summertime by George Evans in 1903 were both big hits.
There's a time in each year that we always hold dear, good old summertime, with the birds and the breezes and sweet-scented breezes, good old summertime.
Another song from the 1900s was Swipsy Cakewalk by Scott Joplin, 1900. On the subject of music, dancing was also very popular in the 1900s. Dances such as the bunny hop, which are speculated to be originating from the Barbary Coast dance halls in San Francisco, California. Other dances like the turkey trot were also very popular. They were often known to fast ragtime music made in the decade. Also the grizzly bear, considered a clumsy dance, the grizzly bear step is a correct imitation of the movements of a dancing bear. Art has been around since the dawn of man. In the early 1900s, an art movement known as Expressionism began to take hold. Artists began to express feelings into their work instead of representing scenes or objects. Henri Matisse's open-window Collier artwork was an early icon of modernism and expressionism, painted in 1905. Another artwork from the time was painted by Pablo Picasso. His work often had the general theme of circus performers, which were at the time considered social outsiders, independent or different people. Lastly is the Dance Hall Bellevue, painted by Ernest Ludwig. Movies were becoming a new form of entertainment and storytelling. However, they had no sound or music. This movie era was best known as the silent film era, which ended in 1929. A famous film from this time period was George Méliès's A Trip to the Moon. The film had innovative special effects and a very visually oriented story. Another iconic film from this time period was Edwin Porter's The Great Train Robbery. Another commercial success, with even more innovative special effects for the time period. It was considered by some historians to be the first American action film. Another film from the 1900s was The Story of the Kelly Gang, directed by Charles Tate. The film is about a true story of a notorious Australian outlaw named Ned Kelly. History is full of very famous historical events. Most have vastly changed the world. The Progressive Era occurred around the 1900s timeframe. It started from the 1890s and ended in the 1920s. This era was a period of political reformation and social activism that spread across the US. President Theodore Roosevelt was considered a progressive president, along with William Howard Taft and Woodrow Wilson. Over in Russia, Bloody Sunday occurs after suffering defeat from the Russo-Japanese War. The Russian Revolution in 1905 begins after troops have fired on a defenseless crowd of civilians, releasing a wave of political and social unrest across Russia. In 1900, the Boxer Rebellion was a secret Chinese organization called the Society of the Righteous and the Harmonious Fist. This rebellion led to an uprising in northern China against the Japanese influence in there. They were called Boxers because they did exercises that made them bulletproof. Well, that's what they believed. Unfortunately, an international force that included some American troops ended the rebellion in 1901. In 1907, Oklahoma is established as a state. Originally Indian Territory, Oklahoma joined in November 16, 1907. Invention is the pinnacle of all technology created, electronic or mechanical. In 1903, the Wright brothers constructed their first plane. Although it was heavy, they had successfully flown their first aircraft across Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Most importantly, they were considered the first aeronautical engineers. On October 1st, 1908, Henry Ford's Model T is completed and moved into production after a successful run. Ford's Model T sold 15 million cars, the most sold at the time until Volkswagen Beetle surpassed it in 1972. While trying to keep up with the demands of the Model T, Henry Ford invented the assembly line, which dramatically reduced the time it takes to assemble the car. Politics are the base of governments, and governments can govern societies. In 1907, the Second Hague Peace Conference of 46 nations adopted 10 conventions on rules of war. The rules mostly had to deal with war crimes, respecting state laws, and exploding things on foreign land. Also in the 1900s, people were pushing for political reformation. Businessmen, workers, and veterans were pushing to clean up and reform the government. Andrew Carnegie, a wealthy businessman known for manufacturing tremendous amounts of steel, donated $10 million to form the Carnegie Institution in 1902. In 1906, the famous San Francisco earthquake occurred. With a 3-day fire and more than 500 dead, it was considered the worst earthquakes ever to occur in the US. Another earthquake in Sicily, Italy, kills 150,000 people in 1908 with a magnitude of 7.1. In 1900, the Galveston hurricane occurred. Books are one of the earliest forms of transmitting and storing information. The Octopus Story of California is a 1901 novel by Frank Norris. It was meant to be part of a trilogy, but things didn't fall through. The Iron Heel is a dystopian novel written by Jack London in 1908. It is considered to be the earliest of the modern dystopian novels. Lastly is The Golden Bowl, written by Henry James in 1904. This novel is an intense study of marriage and adultery.